Hey everyone, and thanks for downloading our Risk Assessment Workbook. In this video, I'm going to show you what is inside and walk through the best ways to use it. So once you download the workbook, you'll have a PDF with a front page that looks like this. The idea here is that you can print off one workbook for each risk assessment project that you do, and in filling it out, you'll have all of the necessary documentation that's required per ANSI B11. So the next page is an introduction. Basically, it says that this is just a workbook outlining a process. The results, as with any process, are going to depend on the effort and energy that you put into it. It's a garbage in, garbage out type of situation. So put in the effort and energy and the thought up front, and you'll get really good results that come out the back end of this. It also has contact information for my company, Alpine Engineering and Design, should you want help with completing any risk assessments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. All right, so the next page is where we really start. The first step is to identify the subject of the evaluation. What is it? What process? What product? What machine? What piece of equipment are we evaluating? And we're going to write that down, and we're also going to write the date of the assessment on this first line. And then the next step is to document the team that's doing this risk assessment. Now the team should have at least two people. One person who is intimately familiar with the subject of the evaluation, the equipment that we're analyzing. This could be an operator, or if it's a new piece of equipment, one of the designers. And the second person should be someone who is knowledgeable of common hazards and is experienced with risk assessments. Now, maybe that's you. If not, there are people that you can hire, for example, from our company. So to begin this, it's not really a one-day process. To do a proper risk assessment, you really need to start preparing before you sit down with a piece of equipment. And in that preparation, you want to look at a whole bunch of different things that we have listed here. This is a partial list. There may be other things that you would want to include in your preparation depending on your specific situation. And then also part of that preparation is to define the scope of this risk assessment. It may be a whole project, it may be just a piece of a process. It doesn't so much matter what the scope is, but it does really matter that you say what the scope is covering for each project. So the next thing we're going to do is look at similar products. Maybe you have very close competition, maybe you have things that are kind of similar, but yours is pretty standalone. We want to look at a pretty wide range of similar products. And when we look at those, we also want to look at accidents that have happened with those, near misses, and difficulties and problems that people have had with them, so that we can really kind of benchmark and get an idea of what risks and hazards we might be looking for when we sit down with the equipment. And then we want to look also at the environment where this is used. Is it something that's portable? Is it used outside? Is it used indoors? Is it used at night where lighting might be an issue? Is it used in coastal areas where you're going to have a lot of sea salt type corrosion? Is it a really noisy environment? Is it a really hot or really cold environment? There's a lot of environmental factors that can affect safety, and so here we want to describe the different environments where this might be used and start to think about what hazards those different environments might introduce. And so the next step is to select a risk assessment matrix. This is how we are going to rate our hazards, or rate the risks associated with each hazard a little bit later on. So it's just important to choose that and select it before you really get into this. So next we're going to determine who the users are based on the scope of this analysis. Who might be affected, what are they doing, and what tasks are they performing that we need to see if there are any hazards while they perform those tasks. And then we want to look at the education level of each user, because this is important because you can expect more of people with more education than you can of people with lower education. For example, one example that I like to talk about is with exercise equipment. Are you designing this to be used by LeBron James's personal trainer, or is this for who we call Bob the January Warrior, who works out 2 weeks a year, usually during January, right after his New Year's resolution? Just thinking about that, you can tell that you're going to have very different expectations of how well they're going to know the rules and follow them. And so looking at the education level of the user is something that is really important, and I have found is often overlooked. So after that, we're going to look at what methods are we going to use to identify hazards. Now, there are a lot of different methods that you can use. I've listed some of them here in the book. I always recommend a job hazard analysis and a failure modes and effect analysis if you're looking at a piece of equipment. But you are welcome to use whatever you are comfortable with and whatever you think fits the needs of your situation. But what is important for the documentation is that you identify which methods that you are using. So I've also included in this workbook a job hazard analysis worksheet. So here you would write, I like to number the hazards. This comes in handy later on. The personnel, who is performing this specific task. Is it an operator that this hazard is present for? Is it a maintenance person, etc.? Then you write what the task that they're doing it is. Is this during normal operation? Is this during a loading or an unloading phase? Is this during a clean out cycle? And then what the hazard is. Is it a pinch hazard? Is it a run over hazard? Is it a slip, trip, and fall hazard? Whatever it is, write it down. And this having a worksheet like this just helps to keep things organized. I usually print out several pages of this particular sheet when I do these assessments, because sometimes you need more than one page. The next page is your FMEA worksheet. And so here we're going to identify the function, the potential failure mode, the potential effects of that failure, and the potential causes of that failure. And so this is just another way to keep that all organized. And you can again number what these hazards are going to be, and that'll come in handy in just a minute. So after we have identified all the hazards, now we can go ahead and evaluate the risk. And as you very likely know, risk is a combination of how likely something is to happen and how bad someone's going to get hurt. And so with the risk assessment matrix that we chose before, a few pages previous, there were 4 levels of the probability and 4 levels for the severity of harm. So you can look at those here and categorize each of your hazards, and then look at the risk from that risk assessment matrix. So once we have all of those, we can see if the risk is high or low, or where that risk ends up, and if there's any areas that we need to reduce the risk in to get them to acceptable levels. It's well known that you can't absolutely eliminate risk from just about anything, but you can really reduce risk to an acceptable level, and that's really what we're shooting for. And so this kind of walks us through the hierarchy of risk reduction. There are 4 steps. Essentially, you can design it out, you can guard against it, you can create awareness or provide warnings, or you can have administrative controls, which is essentially training. And those are in order of most effective to least effective there. So this gives you a little bit more information on risk reduction and ways of doing that. And then to document this, we can look at the number of the hazard that we put down from the job hazard analysis and the FMEA, list the hazard So that's, two cells from the previous worksheets and the initial probability, severity, and risk. And then we're going to write down what is it that we are going to do to reduce the risk. What is the risk reduction measure? And then with that risk reduction measure, what's the new residual probability? What's the new severity? What's the new risk? And we're going to keep iterating this until we get this residual risk to a level that we are comfortable with. And with that, we can achieve tolerable risk. Sometimes it's going to take multiple times going through this. You always want to go back and verify that what you think you have done to reduce a risk actually does reduce that risk, and also that it doesn't introduce any new risks. Both important things to look at when you're looking at risk reduction measures. And then, of course, the last step is the documentation step. Here I've listed what the ANSI B11 standard specifies should be included in the documentation. If you go through and fill out all parts of this workbook, you should have all of that done very well. So that hopefully will be very helpful to you as you go through your risk assessments. Also included in your PDF is going to be our checklist that we use. Hopefully it's helpful for you as well. It lists a lot of common hazards. It's combined from a number of different checklists and also with our personal experience. So hopefully this is something that everyone can do on their own, but a lot of times there are other reasons that you would want to bring in an outside consultant, bring in someone to help you perform your risk assessments. One reason might be that you are already very busy with your day-to-day tasks and you don't quite have time to get these risk assessments done, and they keep getting put off and put off and put off and put off until they never ever get done. I've seen that happen in a lot of different companies, so you wouldn't be alone if you're in that boat. The next reason is that a lot of times insurance companies and other regulatory bodies like to see a third party involved in the risk assessment process, and because there's just no conflict of interest. And so in that instance, bringing someone in from outside gives a lot more credibility to the risk assessment. And the third reason is sometimes it's just helpful to have someone who's done it before, who knows how to do it and is familiar with all the different types of hazards that are common, that can guide you through the process. You can get it done quickly and correctly and kind of really teach you how to do this on your own. And so those are all reasons that you might want to bring someone in. Now at Alpine Engineering and Design, we have 6 risk assessment professionals. They are all licensed professional mechanical engineers and also certified safety professionals in comprehensive practice. We've done hundreds of these risk assessments, from conveyors to trailers to manufacturing equipment to custom lifting devices. All we do is we come in and we apply the proven frameworks and use our knowledge and experience in safety and engineering to reduce the risks in your products and equipment and your machines. So we found that aside from increasing safety, this can also lead to several other benefits. It can reduce company liability. It can provide the required documentation. It can reduce or eliminate recalls. It creates more happy customers. We've seen actually a lot of patents come out of safety features, which can be a great benefit to a growing company. But perhaps most importantly, it gives the safety and engineering managers peace of mind and a good night's sleep. They don't have to worry about whether or not their product is going to hurt someone. So here are some companies that we've done risk assessment work for. A lot of big, well-known companies find that it's beneficial to bring in a third-party professional. So if you find you'd like to have someone come in and help, we'd be happy to do that. You can click below to schedule a call. We can see if it's something that fits with our background and experience, and if it's something that we can help you with. So with that, good luck. We'll be here when you're ready. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. We'll talk soon.